Hi and welcome to Masterdisk. This is our lathe room where we cut records. We're going to show you around all the different parts of the room and try to answer your questions. There's really 4 steps to making a record. The first step is mastering. The second step is we transfer that material from the master onto a lacquer reference disc. The next step after that is after we get approvals, after the reference has been played and we get approvals, then we cut the master lacquer. That's the third step. And then the fourth step is plating. But let's go into each one of the steps with a little more detail. I bet you're thinking that we say the word master, we call everything a master. And that's actually true. The word is used master disc, master record, reference master, master pressing. It's confusing. I'll try to demystify the process as we go along. The mastering process is the creative process. This is where we adjust levels, adjust equalization and compression, de-essing, other processes that go into making the record sound good. Mastering for digital is one process. While it's technically possible to take your digital master and use that to cut a record from, it's better to customize the mastering for vinyl. And whoever's cutting your record, if it was me or anybody else, would probably tell you that a custom master for vinyl is going to get you in a better place. It's going to have your record cut easier and the final product will sound better. I've found that the mastering that I use for digital release is intended for the person who's going to be listening to a digital playback. Somebody's going to be listening on earbuds, somebody's going to be listening on their laptop, somebody's going to be listening on a home stereo system, maybe even a car, or literally on their phone. So that's one sort of environment. People are going to be listening to one song at a time, and it might be in a stream with a whole bunch of other songs. A vinyl listener, on the other hand, is very likely to put on the record and play the whole side and be engrossed in the record and be looking at the artwork and the graphics and the credits and everything that's inside. And so that's a little bit more of an album kind of format. And it's a little bit more of a relaxed listen. In other words, the arc and the ebb and flow of an album played back on vinyl translates pretty well to the end listener. In other words, all the songs don't have to be like super loud and compressed and easy to listen to. You can take the listener on a little more of a journey with vinyl because typically that listener has purchased the vinyl and wants to experience it because of the journey. Oftentimes, mastering for vinyl allows us to do more things creatively and not be quite so concerned with how commercial it's actually going to be. So what happens during the mastering process is all of these things we just discussed. We take the songs and put them together in sequence. We determine what songs are supposed to be on the A side and the B side. We connect them with crossfades or with segues if needed, or if that's part of what the artist really wants us to do. And then we establish the sound, the levels between the songs and the vibe of the record. And it gets so granular that I might master a little differently for a funk soul record than I might master for like an R&B soul record. Just the fact that one makes you feel, takes you in a certain direction. On a personal note, what happens to me is the music reminds me generally of some music that I enjoyed from the past. And if I find it like, oh, this reminds me of like an early fusion Wrecker Brothers kind of jazz thing, well then, as long as that's compatible with what the producer wants to do, that's the direction I'll take it in. Picking up from there, the next step after determining the mastering is figuring out how it's going to cut on the turntable. So how do we do that? I don't know, it only takes something like 10 or 20 years of experience to get to the bottom of that question. This is why you want to have somebody with experience and with a track record cutting your record. It's a relatively simple process. We take the audio and we route it through the equipment, and the cutter head moves across the disc, and while the audio is fed into the cutter head, the needle wiggles back and forth and it inscribes the audio signal into the disc. On a surface, it's a very simple process, but to get the very best sound quality out of this process, you have to try several different methods and you have to try several different settings. As it turns out, it's pretty easy to cut a record that's kind of soft and that doesn't have very much top end. So kind of a boring sounding record is very easy to cut. But to cut something that sounds really great in a pop environment or in a classical environment or in a jazz environment where you really want it to be vibrant and lively, that takes some extra effort. We have to look at the meters and look at the microscope and look at our settings and try to cut it and see if it works. It's a try and fail, try and pass kind of process that we go over and over again. That part of the process we call making test cuts. Our client generally never hears the test cuts. These are things that we cut into the disc and then play back with a cartridge to see how it sounds. Our goal, my prime directive in all of this stuff, is to create a record that sounds the same as my client's master whenever possible. There are times when I have to make changes, but by and large, I'm trying to get the entire performance as it comes in on their master tape and get it on the record. And if along the way I can actually make it better and actually make it a more enjoyable process to hear and to listen to coming off of vinyl because of the nuances of the vinyl playback process, well, that's even better. So when we cut the reference disc, we will send that to our client for approval. The kind of things that they would be listening for are very obvious, skips and distortion, but other more subtle things like, do all the songs sound like they belong on the same record? Are the actual mastering parts of it good? Now there's some interesting things to know about a reference disc. It's a soft material that we cut this audio into. It's not putty, but it's like a dried paint. It's soft enough that you can scribe into it, but hard enough that it will hold its shape. So we have to make sure that these are packaged very carefully and shipped and handled very carefully. It's very easy if you have an accident while cueing your tone arm onto a reference disc, it's very easy to scratch it. And then every time you play that reference, you'll hear the scratch. And unfortunately, quite often, my clients will get a reference disc from me and there'll be some noises on it that they're concerned about. And we have to go through some tests and we have to confirm that no, those noises weren't actually on the original reference. They were as a result of shipping damage or as a result of handling. So we have to do a few things. Is we have to educate our clients to make sure that they know what they are listening for and what the kind of sounds that they're going to hear. And at times we have to suggest that maybe it's in their best interest if we do the quality control part of the process. This is something we know really, really well. We do it every day. And quite frankly, there's probably nobody better suited to quality control the disc cutting than the person who cut the disc. That is, if they're willing to put in the time to do it right. So going back to our 4 steps of making a record, we've done the mastering portion, and we've done the initial cutting portion, and we've got the reference disc in the client's hands, and they're going to hopefully give us an approval or send us their concerns. And so now we have to repeat everything and cut a master. And the master is cut exactly the same way as the reference is, except we don't listen to it after it's done. The process of listening to a master actually changes the sound enough that we avoid playing back the master. If we played back the master, what literally would be happening is the needle would be partially rubbing some of the high frequencies off of the groove as it's going around. We have to make sure that that we've reset our console and reset all of our settings exactly the way we did the reference disc, and then we cut our master lacquer. The master lacquer then gets boxed up and sent to the pressing plant where the final step of the process is done, the plating process. So the master lacquer is put into an electroplating bath, and that in that bath, the metal particles inside the solution are drawn to the master lacquer, and a metal part is literally grown off of that lacquer. And when that comes out of the bath, they peel it apart, and you have a metal part that is the negative of the lacquer that we cut. It incorporates all of the sound and all of the nuances, and even all of any defects that were in that lacquer are going to be replicated on that part. And then that's plated again to make a mother, and finally one final time to make a stamper. The stamper metal part is processed carefully, put into a press, and then our first test pressings come out. There's a lot of nuance to the whole metal making process. We don't make the metal parts here, but we send our parts out to a variety of different places that do very, very, very good work at making sure that those metal parts turn out as high quality as possible. So test pressings are made. Test pressing is an actual record. A test pressing is made on a press, just like your final record will be made, but it's made in a very short run, only usually 4 to 7, maybe no more than 10 test pressings are made. And they're sent out to the different people involved with the process, usually the label, usually the artist, and hopefully we get a pair of test pressings sent to us for quality control. It's very important to listen to the test pressing in a certain manner. In other words, test pressing has noises. It's going to be a little bit noisier than your final record is going to be. And it sometimes takes a little getting used to. But I have a separate process. I have a very special process that I use so that I can make sure that the noises that we're hearing on that test pressing are not going to be on the final record. What I actually do is take 2 test pressings, play them both back one at a time into a computer, and line them up precisely so that I can eliminate the noises that are on just one test pressing, and I can focus all of my attention on the noises that are on both test pressings. The theory here is if the noise is on only one test pressing, then and it's not on the other test pressing, that means that the mold that made those records is good at that point. If the noises correspond and our same noise is on both test pressings, then there's a chance that the mold has that noise on it as well. And if that noise is severe, if that noise is undesirable, then we might have to stop the press literally and evaluate what the metal parts that the plant has in-house, and even in some cases go back and recut the master so that we can create new metal parts so that we can get a clean playback. If you're following along with this, you'll understand this is a very laborious, time-consuming process of cutting, plating, pressing, evaluation, then cutting again, plating and pressing and evaluation again. And it causes there to be, often to be a long time transpire between when the record was first, the mastering was first approved to when we get our approved test pressings done. And it's been my experience that it's virtually impossible to rush this process. The faster you try to make this go, the more obstacles you run into. Some plants have better luck with this than others, but even the best plants have times when noises and imperfections creep into the process. It's not that they've done anything wrong, it's just a very manual process, very labor-intensive process. And the only way to know you're going to get a really great record is to listen to it top to bottom very carefully and compare that to other records that you know and make sure that it sounds good. That's the main reason, in my mind, why you need to come to an independent mastering facility like Masterdisk to have your record cut. We not just certify our equipment and our skills and our knowledge and our determination, but we stay with you through the whole process, through the plating process, through the test pressing evaluation process, and we even communicate for you to the pressing plant because we know the technology, we know the terminology. We can actually have that conversation with the pressing plant and find the cause of the problem much quicker than you can if you're not quite sure exactly how the lingo works, or how the language works when communicating with the pressing plant. So while this is a very thinly veiled sales pitch for our services, we're not the only ones that do this, but I would highly recommend that you utilize the skills and the experience of an independent cutting facility that's going to stay with you and help you get your project all the way through to the finish line.